wanted to start out with a question over coffee this morning about these little matchbooks that we're including with orders now. So a lot of you asked, what are these? What are they for? What does this little BW mean? It says Prevail on it, but what is this code that's on the inside? I'll tell you the secret. So, hey guys, welcome to Gear Tasting. Today I wanted to start out by unpacking the bag that I took to some precision rifle work that I did in Virginia. And I wanted to just discuss kind of items as I pull them out. I thought that would be the best thing to do rather than kind of have a select number of things that I discussed. You know, other than the gun, which I was borrowing, so is not here today. These are the items that I had with me. So, another buddy of mine has a really good spotting scope. It's a Bushnell Elite spotting scope, and it's pretty much the best glass I've ever seen for a spotting scope. I don't have a lot of experience with spotting scopes, but from the limited number of them that I have seen and looked through, it's one of the best out there, and it's one I definitely recommend too. It's like the Bushnell Elite Tactical or something like that. So then we also had a rangefinder there, which is key for some of the other stuff I'm going to talk about when I get into the Kestrel and things like that I took. So I guess clothing is right at the top of this bag, so I'll talk about that first. I took this Tactical Distributor shooter shirt. This was a cotton shirt, which I typically don't recommend because cotton's rotten, but it actually did pretty well. I didn't find that it just completely soaked out on me because we were fairly stationary for the most part. We were hiking up and down berms, and I did kind of, we climbed a tower and things like that too, so we're out in the sun quite a bit. And I attribute a lot of that because to the veil that I wore. So this is kind of, I don't know what to call it. It's not a shamag. I would call it kind of a sniper veil type thing. But one thing that I really liked about this versus the other shamags that all the other guys had on, which are great for blocking sun, this is vented. So when you're sitting down there on a gun and you're wearing this on your head to keep the sun off, there's still airflow that comes through this. With the shamag, it's blocking a lot of that airflow, and I mean, my other buddies I was shooting with were getting super hot under that shamag under a gun because you're sitting there for prolonged periods of time. So this was really worth its weight in gold, and I will take this every other time I go shoot from now on. And I was doubling it up like this too, which filters even more of the light through it because a lot of light comes through as just kind of a single ply almost with this. So in lots of cases I was doubling this up to kind of help reduce the sun that was coming through. What I should have done on the shirt too is also, I should have taken one of these Velocity Systems Boss Rugby shirts. This is like a synthetic shirt. It's, if you can see that, it's kind of ventilated, or it's kind of a mesh material, and I really love these, and I completely forgot about them. I should have taken one of these with me. And then on the pants, I really love the Arc'teryx pants that I took. If I remember correctly, these are the Sphinx Pants from Arc'teryx, and my only gripe about them is the nylon knee pad that's kind of in the front, this strip that runs down there, because your knees stay hotter if you're not running knee pads. Well, you stay hot, period, if you're running knee pads as well, but because of that nylon strip, it's pressed right against the front part of your leg, and it can kind of add to the heat that you're getting. But these are made out of tweed, which if you've read some of my articles kind of reviewing Arc'teryx clothing, the stretch in the tweed is just amazing, and this is by far one of my favorite fabrics just because of the durability and resistance to abrasions and things like that. I absolutely love tweed, and it's by far my favorite fabric to wear in the heat and pretty much any other time. I wore these out at the Mammoth Sniper Challenge too, and they held up like a champ. The newer pair that I have that's also tweed, which I think I've talked about in an article before, I like these a lot better just in terms of the lack of the strip on the knee pad like the Sphinx Pants have. I don't remember the name. On these Arc'teryx pants, they never put the name of their clothing actually inside on the labels, but this is the 34438. I know the name of these somewhere, but I don't have it with me. At any rate, this is what I like too. they don't have some of the features that the Sphinx Pants has, but I feel like this was kind of an upgrade from the Sphinx. So they have kind of a, almost a, I guess a tie down elastic in the inside, and so do these. These are just a little more streamlined, so this was definitely kind of, I feel, an upgraded model, because I've been wearing these, God, since 2011, so it's close to 5 years now I've had these, and there's no holes in them. They're holding up good, so that's kind of a buy cheap, buy twice, or buy expensive, cry once, or whatever the hell that is, whatever euphemism you want to throw in there. So the other thing is I took along this Haley flat pack because I was limited on space, and I found that this was plenty, that everything that I needed to haul kind of back and forth as I was shooting definitely fit in this pack really well. So when we were walking up and down the tower and things like that, I had to take everything I needed with me. Compressed flat, but I never carried it that way. I carried it completely opened up or expanded, and I really feel like it did a good job for what I needed it to do. I wouldn't want to carry this necessarily long distances with these straps. There's no padding in the straps, so that's, I feel like, one of the downsides, but it's all a compromise because obviously these are removable and you can mount it on the back of a plate carrier or something like that too. So that's not really what it was designed to do, I believe, is to carry weight over long distances. So at least with the backpack strap modification. So I did like that. I found that really useful. The bag, the rifle bag that I took, really came in handy. It's lightweight, so it was perfect for traveling. And again, it's the push button connection to the front of the gun. So I always had this with me as I was going through the different stuff, different scenarios. Because we set up stages that we were shooting kind of similar to stages we were shooting at Mammoth to kind of help drill us and to do some stuff with long range stuff. Arc'teryx gloves, I didn't really use these much other than to move steel and things like that. We were moving steel all around the range, and these definitely came in handy for that. I feel like the leather held up really good for that type of deal. Back to clothing real quick. I also had this Under Armour shirt that I didn't wear. I think this might have been cooler in certain situations, but I did not wear that at all, so that was kind of something I didn't use. And I started out wearing a boonie hat like this, but I quickly kind of got tired of having to fold up the sides for my ear pro and things like that, so I just went to a ball cap and talked about the veil that I had on. So that's kind of what I used for that. I had a rain layer, didn't have to use that, thankfully. Had a different Arc'teryx top and didn't use that at all. The Salomon Speed Assault shoes were absolutely awesome. These were really exactly what I've been looking for a long time. If you're familiar with the Speedcross shoes, this is kind of a awesome hybrid between the lightweight nature of the Speedcross and I guess what we call this like a 3/4 inch or a mid. And it also is very flexible back here, so I found that it wasn't tough to bend over or crouch down or get in my heels on shooting positions and things like that. What did bend over make you laugh? Anyway, the grip on these, or the tread, is vastly superior to the Speedcross. Another friend of mine that was out there, Matt, he's written some articles for us before. He has a pair of Speed Assault shoes that he's had for 3 months now. He lives in San Francisco. Why, I don't know. Keep trying to get him to move, especially with all the gun legislation that just got passed, but that's another story for another day. But he's had a pair for 3 months, and he walks in them quite consistently, and the wear that he has is very, very minimal. So if you compare that to a Speedcross shoe, granted, that's using these shoes outside the scope of what they were intended to be used for, but, hey, you got shoes, you're going to wear them, and, these hold up, so that's that. Really like those, and I will write something up eventually on these when I get some more time into my ITS. Electronic Ear Pro, again, I feel is always a godsend. I love having Electronic Ear Pro because you can actually hear what's going on. That was one thing I opted to leave behind for weight at Mammoth in the Sniper Challenge, and I severely regretted it. I had just, Surefire Ear Pro in, and I had a really hard time listening to the calls from the spotter and the ROs, and it was just it was a cluster. So I will definitely be taking those next year, weight be damned. We didn't really run much sling supported stuff when we were doing the stages, so I didn't find myself using a sling too much. Always have a trauma kit with me. Thankfully didn't have to use that either. Arc'teryx Rigger's belt was awesome. I love the flat nature of it. It's great for, especially laying prone quite a bit like we were doing and getting into shooting positions. I didn't find a belt dug into me at all, and that was, I think, a testament to that. This is a rifles only shooting mat. I love this thing. It came in very handy for a lot of different things we were doing. Shooting mats are, some people use them, some people don't. I threw it down when we were zeroing at the 100-yard line and things like that, but when we got into some of the shooting positions for the stage-like stuff we were doing, I wasn't using a shooting mat, but definitely used it. Let's see, a couple other things. I won't go through some of these little accessories that I did wind up using, but I will talk about dope and the Kestrel, which I think is an important discussion. It might take a little bit, but I think it's worthwhile, so I would like to walk through that stuff too. All right, so I want to spend a couple minutes just talking about the Kestrel applied ballistics meter that I have, and also some stuff about dope that I was using while I was there, because I think that's one of the most intriguing things about long range or precision rifle stuff is really the math behind it and how you come up with the variables that tell you the amount of elevation you need to actually hit a target at 1,000 yards. So that's what dope is all about. So dope is data on previous engagements. I'll try to run through this a little quickly, but I just want to throw out a few of the fundamentals that kind of will help you understand this. So when Kestrel first came out, it was a wind meter. They teamed with Applied Ballistics, and now they've made a unit that's still the size of a wind meter that can calculate variables like wind speed and direction to the target and humidity and temperature and all those good things that you need, because all those things have an effect on the bullet. So they partner with Applied Ballistics, and now you've got actually a ballistics calculator inside the Kestrel. So by switching from weather mode to ballistics mode, you can now get weather data and apply that directly to the ballistics calculation. So normally if you had an app like on your phone, like the Knight's Bullet Flight app is a great app. It's a paid app, and one I've used quite a bit before I got a Kestrel, and it's one I was relying on a lot. What you do to update data in the Knight's app is you pull station data from local weather readings and things like that. So temperature, barometric pressure, and humidity all have an effect on the bullet, and that's typically what's referred to as density altitude. So all three of those variables are density altitude in one variable, and density altitude, or DA, is used a lot in shooting. So you'll get your DA for a certain place that you're at and you're shooting on a specific day. So DA can change even day to day, even hour to hour. So what's great about the Kestrel is that as that DA, or as all that data is changing on you as you're shooting, the ballistics part of that is updated with that information in the Kestrel. So it can be a really good advantage. But a quote that I like from Jacob at Rifles Only, he said something to the effect of, you can have all the data in the world, but if you slap the trigger, none of it matters. So as if to say, you could have fancy devices like this, you can have all the data that you need at your fingertips, but if your fundamentals are not correct on the gun, none of that matters, because those small variables that are affecting the bullet don't matter if you're jerking the trigger and the bullet is wobbling as it comes out of the muzzle anyway. So all those things matter. Fundamentals matter. And back to Kestrel and dope, it's great to have that stuff, but you've got to start somewhere. So if you were building a dope card, which this is kind of just a mix match of some notes and dope and stuff like that I've kind of collected over the span of shooting. You're always building your dope. So data on previous engagement was what it stands for. So the more that you can shoot, the more that you'll have at your fingertips in terms of dope at different times, different elevations. So the other thing that can play into shooting too, and the impact on the bullet, is elevation. So as you ascend in elevation, if you think about gravity, first off, let's talk about gravity. So back to kind of some fundamental stuff. So gravity is obviously impacting the bullet as it's traveling through the air. And velocity is important too. So velocity is typically dictated through the bullet manufacturer. They'll give you kind of a baseline velocity of what your bullet's going to do. It's always best to check that with a chronograph and actually see, what the bullet is. But all that can change too. So, the chronograph may be off because of the way it's measuring. It may be different than the actual velocity that's given to you by the bullet manufacturer. There's a hell of a lot of variables involved with getting the correct dope. So even though you can use the ballistics information that's in this thing, it's always up to interpretation and change. So it may not be 100% correct, and that goes with the ballistics application that's in the Kestrel. That goes for the ballistics data in the Knights app. It's always going to change. So you can, to true your data, you can actually tweak the velocity of the ammunition in the profile of the gun and the bullet and stuff like that. That's in the ballistics application you're using. So that's kind of a quick and dirty way to tweak that to actually get what you're actually getting in your dope. And this is, obviously there's a lot of information contained in things like density, altitude, and ballistic coefficient is another thing that we could kind of talk about too, but honestly that's kind of going down a rabbit hole, and I'd rather kind of save that for another discussion or something. But I've really liked the Kestrel. It's a great thing to have at your fingertips. The biggest thing that I use this for is to measure density altitude, and that's something I track on all my dope. So, at the top of these dope sheets that Rifles Only invented, these are kind of waterproof pieces of paper that I keep in this this thing that's like a slap bracelet, and I can keep this on my arm and actually look at my dope while I'm shooting. Love this thing, and it's I kind of smile every time I slap it on my wrist because of, I grew up with slap bracelets and things like that. But at any rate, so, DA is always calculated, as is, something like location and the date. So kind of what the DA and the dope was doing on a specific day at a specific location. So, based on that, you can kind of look at your elevation, because elevation has a lot to do with the bullet too. So as you rise in elevation, pressure decreases. So there's less pressure on the bullet at altitude than there is at sea level. So a 308 at sea level might have a max effective range of 1,000 yards, but at altitude in, say, Colorado, you may be able to shoot 1,300 or 1,400 yards because there's less, against the bullet as you're shooting, or less pressure against the bullet. So, sorry, I'm kind of going back down that hole and didn't mean to. Anyway, so the Kestrel is great at calculating those kind of things. I would use that to, like I said, to get DA. I would also use it for wind speed. Temperature is important too, so I would aggregate that data in here. And I tried to rely on this as a ballistics calculator, and for the most part it was fairly accurate till I got out to like 500 to 800 to 1,000 yards, and I attribute that to, it could have been my fundamentals too that made that off, but I attributed to it probably being off a little bit even at those closer distances, and I just couldn't see the impact because we were shooting steel, and obviously you ring steel on a IPSC size target, and it's going to ring whether it hits the neck or the base of the target. So it was good for doing that. I was using a range card on this, which you can get on the Kestrel on this Applied Ballistics thing. So I was kind of starting there. I was still tracking my dope. As I was getting dope, I was writing it down manually, and then I was going back and kind of comparing it to the dope that the Kestrel said too. So I never got to the point at which I was trying to true those two numbers, but it kind of is what it is. It's always going to change. It's always up for interpretation, and I was not convinced myself that my fundamentals weren't dead on. So until that's 100% correct, trying to figure out what's wrong with, truing data might not really be what you need to do before you focus on fundamentals. So that's kind of where I wanted to leave that one. All right, so we already answered one of the questions on Questions Over Coffee, but I do want to answer one more. And Questions Over Coffee today is brought to you by Ground Sport from New York. And the question is from Rob over email, who asks, do you use any apps to track your workouts? So I use the Fitbit app a lot to track some stuff that I do, because I like to see how that plays into overall movement for the day and things like that, because there's a bunch of variables in Fitbit that you plug in, or it automatically tracks now your sleep and activity level and all that kind of stuff. So I like to put that in because you can kind of see how that affects your calories burned throughout the day too. So that's my kind of go-to, but I also track things like my max on some lifts, like snatch and hang clean and things like that too. So I will track those kind of manually. Honestly, I have a Word document and I just put the newest stuff up top. I haven't gotten to the point where I've been aggregating that into an app or anything like that yet, but I honestly don't go back much to reference that stuff unless it's been a while since I've done a max. I might reference kind of where I last left off with that kind of stuff. So I know there's a lot of apps out there. One I downloaded, I think, and I haven't used it is I think it's called a 5x5 or something like that, and it you can track maxes. I think it's just deadlifts and bench press, or actually it might be 5 different types of lifts. So that's one I think I have, but I haven't used yet, and I can't really think of anything else offhand, but that's kind of what I use to track that stuff. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed Gear Tasting. If you're liking what we're doing here on Gear Tasting, please consider joining the membership. It's linked below. Join as a crew leader in ITS and allow us to give you back something in return. It's kind of what we have existing, and it's our way of providing something for you to help support the show, again, if you're liking what we're doing here on Gear Tasting. You can also purchase one of these awesome mugs that have the pound tag Gear Tasting, which you can also use the pound tag Gear Tasting to ask your questions on any of the social media networks, and we will try to put them and integrate them into the Questions Over Coffee segment. Thanks for watching.